So, Dan, could you just unpack for us how 12 Stone approaches your strategic planning process? And, it's my understanding as I've watched your content and 12 Stone through the years, that this is something that you revisit on a regular basis. Could you tell us what that looks like?
Sure, Tony. Well, I have to do a quick pre-COVID, post-COVID, because things really have changed. So for many, many years, we can call it pre-COVID. I wonder if that's going to, I wonder if it's going to be like BC, AD. I don't know if that's going
Yeah.
to, is that going to get in there that far? I don't know. But for us, vision was typically 3 to 5 years out, and strategy was typically 18 to 24 months out. Uh, Probably somewhat common to a lot of churches, but that's what it was. That's not what it is. So we might as well talk about what it is, because COVID changed everything.
Hmm.
For us, I think last year, 2020, vision actually changed to adaptation. And vision wasn't even a real thing for half the year or more. It was just adapting rapidly. This year, I think we're getting back to normal. And I think for us, it's a combination of two things: the combined rate of staff capacity and the congregation's readiness. That's how we're constructing vision. Staff is about scope, meaning how much, and the congregation is more about speed, meaning their rate of return. And so we can only plan as far out as the readiness of the congregation and the scope of the staff, the capacity of the staff. So we put those together, and that's kind of giving us our pacing and timing. And when it started, it was really only like 3 months out. That's all it was. And now we're closer to 6 to 9 months out. And I'm hoping we'll get back to, like I said earlier, as far as 18 to 24 months out.
Any sense of when that might be for 12 Stone, Dan?
Uh, well, I know what the prayerful hope is. I know we'd like to see that be restored by as early as maybe January of 22.
Good. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but we're,
Hopefully we're trending in that direction.
yes,
Hopefully.
yes, yes.
All right. So and again, I can fully appreciate, as we've been working with churches on their strategic plans over the last 12 months, certainly early on, it was more of just a reaction to the immediate crisis that we were all facing. And then slowly but surely, the planning's got a little bit longer term, as you've identified. But here's my next question is, once you've identified these are our ministry priorities for the future, whatever length of time into the future those priorities are going to carry you, how do you make sure the right people are working on the right things once those priorities are identified? And I guess the reason why I'm asking is I found, and I don't know if this is a challenge for other organizations, but certainly it has been with churches that we've worked with, that follow through on some of the strategies and the priorities we've identified seem to be particularly challenging for churches. So how do you make sure that follow through is happening at 12 Stone?
Well, I think you're asking two questions, the right people and the right things. That's one question, then follow through is another. So on the first one, Tony, I think in a changing environment, and of course we're always in a changing environment, but COVID has just, escalated everything. So in a changing environment, I think development has to be running in the background all the time. Sometimes in crisis, we start dumping things that we think aren't immediately important. But we've learned that we're a developmental shop anyway, but developments become even more important. And when that continues to run in the background, you'll have the strength to make the staff changes, your bench, all that kind of stuff. You'll have the strength to make those changes as needed. I think that's where it starts. That's not the answer to the question, but I think that's where it starts. When to get the right people in the right positions that have follow-up, when you don't have development constantly running, I think that's a big, big challenge. So sometimes when you ask, well, why isn't it working? I think that's part of it. So I think then, more to your question, the better the leaders are on your staff, the better they are, the greater the likelihood that you're actually going to put them in the right place. And I know that sounds backwards. It might sound like, but did you just put that on the staff? I thought the leaders are placing them. It's really a two-way street. You're making a choice, but then they're the ones who actually do it, when they get there. So I'll go back to then. It's a constant development and a constant conversation to help you know your staff, and that lets you make the right moves. So then to the follow-up piece, the follow-up part, I think that's more linear, almost binary. That's more stuff you and I've even talked about over the years. I think, number one, before you leave the room, decide who takes the ball. Number two, you got to trust the person you gave the ball that they're going to carry it. And then three, I think there's some periodic check-ins. I don't think that's micromanagement. I don't think that's over the top. I think that's just communications. Like, how's it going? Do you need anything? Can I help you solve a problem? I do think some periodic check-ins are important. Yeah. But that's the follow-up piece. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been following the ministry of 12Stone through the years, and it's been amazing, really, to see how God's continued to bless your ministry and help thousands and thousands of people take their next steps toward Jesus. How many locations right now, Dan, in 12Stone? Seven altogether. So here's my suspicion. Maybe I'm wrong. My guess is, as the church has grown, as both the number of staff and volunteer leaders have grown, as the number of campuses have grown, that with that comes complexity and a challenge to keep everybody aligned. Have you noticed that alignment is a bigger challenge the bigger the church has gotten, or has it been the opposite?
No. Absolutely. Leaders by nature don't herd well. They don't. You give them a rule book. They say that, they always have opinions. Leaders have ideas, and depending upon how strong their entrepreneurial bent is, or their kind of just that streak is in them, it can be really challenging. And you want leaders who are strong and bright and have ideas and have notion and vision and stuff, but then aligning it. I think the secret to it is the church vision and the staff culture. The church's vision and the staff's culture is so strong that they want to align. Because I don't think you can make leaders align. I don't think you can make them do it. But when the vision is great and the culture is great, they want to. You just can't force it. I'll tell you a funny story. Do we have time to hear an alignment?
Absolutely.
Story? Okay.
Absolutely.
So I actually have permission to share the story.
It's always good to get permission before you start talking about stories like this.
Talking about your team, but I've forever and ever, do leadership development of teams in my living room. And I've had the campus pastors for many, many, many years. And so we were in one of those huddles in my living room, and there's always tensions in between central services and campuses, not tensions that are bad. They're just, you're solving problems, you're, making agreements and trying to make things work. And so we were talking about it, and we were on the topic of alignment. Okay. And I could feel a little something in the room. And I thought, what is going on here? So we got all the campus pastors. I said, okay, all right. I looked at one of the guys, name was Steve. He's such a great guy, so smart. And I said, Steve, okay, when I say the word alignment, what does that mean to you? And this guy's, he's fun, and he's up, and he's bright, and he's smart. And he just kind of ducked his head and got a little quiet. He said, well, I kind of think maybe it means like, be quiet and do what I'm told. And I said, oh my, I said, really? You've got to be kidding me. And he quickly said, well, what does it mean? What is alignment? He flipped it. He said, what does alignment mean to you? And I said, well, it's always and only meant teamwork. And he goes, really? And so we had this incredible moment of perspective and honest conversation. And of course, we're all laughing by now. But the cool thing is that those kind of moments that help you align come from a culture that's safe enough, honest enough, connected enough, trusting enough that we can have those conversations and just say what's really happening. And that kind of stuff, Tony, is what allows alignment to be really, really good. And at 12 Stone, alignment's really, really good because we
Yeah.
get to be honest about the fact that it's not always easy.
Yeah. Steve should get a bonus for being that
He's,
honest too. So
he's,
that's good.
he should.
All right. So I trust that at 12 Stone alignment is healthy, the team is healthy, but maybe for a friend at another church or something like that, Dan,
Yeah.
help us. What are some of the early warning signs that alignment might be an issue?
Yeah. I like that question. I jotted down a couple of thoughts here because I think there's a sequence of things, Tony, that cascade, they kind of follow each other. And I really do believe it starts with a lack of unity of spirit, just a connected more at a heart level. And then that tends to reveal a lack of clarity of vision. That's the second one. But it starts at a kind of a heart spirit connection level, unity of spirit, just literally the biblical notion, unified in spirit. That then sort of reveals cracks in vision, the clarity of vision, because those two things are closely connected. Then I think it goes to the more commonplace of lack of clarity and expectations. And now you're really beginning to go down the line where you can start seeing these things from your spirit isn't united, the vision isn't clear, clarity of expectations. And then of course the last piece, not quite the last, but the results, a lack of results start to, and you know what, I might have to change that thought because that's probably not an early warning sign. That's probably a mid to later warning sign. The first three for sure, unity of spirit, vision, and expectations. Probably you're getting in a little bit more trouble when you're already seeing results. And then where you're behind the curve is there's an erosion of relationship, where actual relationships start to erode. Now you're really behind the curve and you need to call someone like Tony Morgan to come in and help save you because that's really seriously that staff is going to need some help.
Yeah. Of course, the challenge in churches is we're so kind to each other
Yeah.
That we don't address that challenge when the relationship is broken, the trust is broken. We are very slow to actually acknowledge that the relationship is not healthy, and I think it's part of the reason why sometimes as you've acknowledged, the team has been misaligned maybe for quite some time. Now the relationship is unhealthy. And it's like we're so kind to each other. Even at that point, we're not willing to address the challenges that got us to that place.
Yeah.
So Dan, here's as I'm thinking about in this particular session, actually earlier, we talked about the whirlwind of ministry, the fact that Sundays are always coming, ministry never stops. And so there's this tension that exists, I think, for a lot of church leaders, that we have the sense of a future that God has for our church. And to get there, there's investment of time and energy and resources that are required. But at the same time, there's this constant demand of ministry. And so what's your encouragement to pastors and church leaders of how do you deal with that tension? Because my suspicion is if we're not careful, the day-to-dayness of ministry will creep in and take over any future initiatives, any future direction that God may have for our churches. So how do we help church leaders with that?
Yeah, it's so true, so real, so common. Every 7 days, it never relents. It's like the newspaper company. Of course, do we have newspapers anymore? Actually, we do. It's they have a 24-hour thing. I mean, the next day they got nothing, and they start all over. For us, it's seven days. Even though we all know ministry is every day of the week, and sometimes their most profound ministry is during the week, we still feel the pressure, and that's where I want to go. It's a pressure issue. I don't think it's as much vision management. You're talking about going forward and new initiatives. I don't think it's as much vision management as it is pressure management. That's what throws us off. When a staff or a team, so I think I have a couple of encouraging words on that. When you can get in front of pressure, you'll have what you need to lead and be innovative. So let me say it oversimplistically and then maybe give a couple practical things. Don't let pressure, the whirlwind, drive you. Do everything you can to not let the tail wag the dog. And the only way you can do that is just to say, we're stopping, we're getting off this treadmill, we're not going to do this. Sunday's coming, right? But don't let it chase you. Get out in front. Now, I know anybody might be listening here and thinking, yeah, that's easy to say, but how do you do that? How do you just say, I'm getting off this craziness? There's some practical things we can do. The first one is literally thin out your ministry. Stop doing so many things. And I know that's easier said than done, but that actually is doable. You can look at your list of ministries and ask the questions, do a ministry audit. Which ones are effective? Which ones aren't? What's the ROI? Which ones are having a great kingdom impact? Which ones are bringing more people to Christ? More people saved from addictions, marriages? Which ones are really effective? And stop doing the rest. And if they're all really that effective, then choose the ones that you think God's got his thumbprint, his divine thumbprint, and just go with less stuff to do it deeper. The second thing I think you can do besides thinning out your ministry, I know that's tough, but I think we need to, is to simplify your systems. I think, boy, we can make stuff so complicated. I know sometimes at 12Stone we'll make it complicated, and it's a brilliant team. They're doing great, but life's complicated, ministry is complicated, multi-site's complicated, so the systems are complicated. But the best thing, the more you can make them really simple, the better. And then one last thing I would say, again, trying to be really net practical, is if you'll take just 2 to 3 hours a week to work on your ministry, not in it, you can advance it huge. So often we hear that tossed around for 10, 15 years now. Work on your ministry, not in it. And that'll frustrate leaders. They say, well, when? How much? And I think it's a little bit like tithing and prayer. If we'll put a little investment, the kingdom multiplies it enormously. If you'll put in like a couple hours a week, and you do that consistently, that investment into innovation, vision, future is really, really massive. But sometimes we won't even give ourselves 2 hours a week. So take that back up to the first one, thin out your ministries, you'll get your 2 hours back.
So Dan, if you've done all those things and you've given the ball to somebody else, but they have dropped the ball, and I've actually seen folks that kind of blame this on their wiring. I don't have administrative gifting, so I have trouble staying on top of the details. In that case, we want to trust people that they're going to take the ball and they're going to run with it. Okay. But what happens if folks drop the ball? How do we deal with that?
The first thing we'll do is check in with them to make sure there isn't a personal life, home situation that's just overwhelmed them and they haven't told anybody. So let's assume that we do that and we've discovered that no, everything is good, so that we don't have to switch and care for that in the moment. So now let's go back to, no, they're good to go. They just aren't doing it. They're dropping the ball, saying their number on the Enneagram doesn't do that, or whatever they're saying, right? It's not my gift, and so we'll just start having that, adult question about, that's not acceptable, and we want to help you do it. So we're going to start writing. So what we'll do is we'll write it down and we'll put a date on it. And so we're going to check back in and follow up see that you have done it because you need to do it. And so typically if it goes that far, it'll happen. If it doesn't, then the next thing we do is the first thing is make sure everything's okay in their personal life. The next thing we're going to do is ask can he, will he, or can she, will she? Because somebody who can but won't, you deal with differently than somebody who will but can't. Mm-hmm. And because one is attitude and one is competence. And so that now the next run we're going to go at that is going to be dealing with Competence to see if somebody who can't, can we help them can? And attitude is somebody who can but won't. And the difference between the two is if it's an attitude issue, they can but won't, we have a very, very short rope. The attitude gets a short rope because you can go home, get a good night's sleep, and come back, change your mind, pray, and you've changed your attitude. But competence, we're going to give a good run to that because we want to develop leaders. So that's probably what we would do for that question.